Gwaltney Group, RE/MAX results. Welcome to Rochester Real Estate, featuring Robin Gwaltney from Gwaltney Group RE/MAX Results and Andy Brownell. Here's Andy Brownell on Rochester's News Talk, 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good morning. Welcome to Saturday morning. It's Andy Brownell, News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM. And of course, Robin Gwaltney with Gwaltney Group-RE results with us this morning. Good morning, Robin.
Good morning. How are you?
In the deep freeze.
Yeah, well, January in Minnesota. Wah, wah.
End of January, Robin.
It is almost over. It is almost over. February goes so quick, and the next thing you know, it's March, and we're going to be watching tulips.
And daylight savings time will return.
Yes. That's
I think
good.
That's the part, well, other than the warmer temperatures, obviously, but that switch to more daylight in the evening, I always appreciate that.
Me too. I will not lie. I do work longer when it stays light longer, but I also just have more energy overall because there's more daylight. So it all works out.
It's part of the deal, but we still live in one of the best places to live in the nation. And every time you turn around, there's another study that proves that point.
Okay, so to that point, I have found a very cool article about here is to the best state in America to raise a family in 2023. So I thought, oh my gosh, is it Minnesota? And I went on to read it, and it says the personal finance website Wallet Hub has crowned Massachusetts the best place to raise a family. But the Bay State was followed by a close second by Minnesota. So
there you go.
Second best state to raise a family in America.
So if you live along the East Coast, everybody said Massachusetts because they can't even imagine living in
Coming to Minnesota.
Everybody else said Minnesota.
So, the things that they talked about, and I guess I wouldn't relate these things to Massachusetts, but I'm sure it's, not Boston area, but, outer parts in the state. But they're talking about affordability. They're talking about a lot of employment. Well, I think there's a lot of employment pretty much everywhere now. They're talking about safe schools, low crime, good child care. So I guess activities for kids, all the things that are important to kids. But I am not at all surprised that Minnesota ranked very high in that study. I mean, I'm so grateful to have raised my kids here.
They didn't list healthcare on there.
And you know what? They should have, because then we probably would have been first.
Yeah. It's been amazing to me just over the past 2 to 3 weeks, the number of people I have spoken to who have moved away from Minnesota because of the weather.
And came back because of the health care.
Yeah, exactly. Where they were at down south, obviously. Different states down south, though.
Well, I have personal friends. Yes, absolutely. They still live in Florida, but they're back here right now going through Mayo Clinic. I'm like, they have a Mayo Clinic in Florida. What is the deal? But they're like, it's just not the same as coming home to the mothership. The
mothership. And, on the education side of it, a good friend of mine was in the Albuquerque, New Mexico area. Not in Albuquerque, but nearby. And took the whole family, moved them north back to Minnesota where the kids got to be school age, because he said the worst schools in Minnesota are better than the best schools in New Mexico.
Wow.
Yeah, is.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very true. I mean, we do have an excellent public school system, and we do have very healthy communities, and for the most part, very safe. Our especially when we're talking about Rochester, I mean, our crime rate is considerably lower than a lot of places that you could live in a city of 100,000 people. That's for sure.
Yes, for sure. Anecdotally, along that point, every single day, the police department and the sheriff's department give a briefing on anything of notable crimes, not your property damage, hit and run, or burglaries, robberies, assaults, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
3 of the 5 days this past week, they had nothing to report.
Yay! That is good. That is good.
That's almost unheard of.
That is awesome. Yeah, well, if that word gets out, we'll become the #1 state.
There we go.
Yeah,
there we go.
Sure. So because you're just talking about health, this is kind of a weird transition, but one of the articles that I read for today's show was about radon testing.
Oh.
And we're seeing this report came directly from the Department of Health, and it said that radon testing during home purchases rose by 40% in 2022. And so you might see that headline and think, oh my gosh, people have this newfound fear of radon, but actually that fear is not newfound. It's just that in 2020 and 2021, you couldn't ask for a radon test even if you wanted it, because the seller was not in a position to have to give you anything because of the market being the way the market was. So it doesn't mean that those folks didn't test for radon after they moved in. You know what I mean? So I think it's kind of a little bit skewed in the sense that, yes, you know, when you go down to the public health and you pick up the radon test kit and you say this is for a home purchase, right? Well, if the people have already bought the house and now they want to know what is our radon level, do we have to mitigate? Now they're just saying it's for our own personal use. So anyway, I think that yes, it is a concern, and people definitely do talk a lot about radon, and it is real because it is the second leading cause in lung cancer, you know, behind cigarette smoking. So radon is real.
How come I thought it was mandatory when a home got sold that had the testing? That's not the case, huh?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, it isn't at all. So, and I'm not going to say it isn't anywhere, because I know that when you go up to the Twin Cities, I mean, I don't believe it's mandatory anywhere. It definitely is not in Olmsted County, but up in the Twin Cities, there are certain ordinances for each city that they have to test for things just because it's a city rule.
Oh, okay.
So like the city of St. Paul, you have to test for certain things, and the city of Minneapolis, you have to test for certain things, but we don't have anything like that as of now in Rochester.
I do know that our geology in this part of the world
tends to lend a hand to radon.
Well, a bit more decaying uranium in the soil than, and also I think that our homes being closed up for so many months out of each year because of our colder weather plays a role in it as well.
Yep, that is correct.
That's why I like my leaky home.
You know what? There's something to be said about those old houses where I mean, it might be a little bit more expensive to heat, and boy, that has been a hot button lately. I have seen so much on Facebook about our heat bill was twice as much this month as it was last month, and I mean, there's been a huge increase in all of that.
I had
tough winter.
My heating bill was the highest it's ever been, but
was it?
It didn't double or anything like that.
Okay,
but
good.
It creeped up to the highest it's ever been. But I more or less expected that because the price of natural gas had risen, and plus they tacked on that surcharge for the Texas debacle when prices spiked. Yeah.
We're lucky this year because, you know, we are one of those patrons that uses propane. And so what we always do is prepay before the winter comes upon us. It's always a little bit of a gamble, like, oh geez, do I prepay and then the prices drop, or do I prepay and then they never rise at all during the season? I just gave them my money all up front. Or do I prepay and save myself some money because halfway through the season the prices go up? I'm pretty sure this year I definitely saved myself some money by prepaying.
I'm curious. So when you locked in that price for the whole year, so they do a delivery midwinter, you still get that locked-in price?
Correct.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So like I'll prepay for 3,000 gallons, say, up front, and I prepay for two houses because they're right next door to each other, right? My parents and mine, or my dad's and mine. Yep. And anyway, when they come, they just fill them up, and then they just they leave me a receipt saying we just used 400 gallons of your prepay, you know, and now you have X number of gallons left, and then when it's gone, then they start delivering it at the market rate. But I think I did a pretty good estimate, and I think I'll get through the winter with my prepay, so that's good.
Yeah, well, the people who are really hurting are the people who have fuel oil.
Yeah.
And thankfully, there's not that many in Minnesota who still, use fuel oil. That's mainly a East Coast phenomena. But we have to take a break already, Robin.
Okay.
So we'll do that, take care of some business real quick, and come back with more of Robin Gwaltney with Gwaltney Group-RE results on News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
We'll be right back with Robin Gwaltney and Andy Brownell on Rochester Real Estate. This is News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Save big money on your next project at Menards. America's
Robin Gwaltney from Gwaltney Group-RE Results and Andy Brownell on Rochester's News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good morning and welcome back. We're chatting with Robin Gwaltney, Gwaltney Group-RE Results, of course, because it's Saturday morning.
And that's what we do.
And as always, Robin, there is a lot of discussion wherever you go, where government leaders gather, St. Paul, Rochester City Hall, wherever it may be, about affordable housing.
Yes, for sure. There is definitely a need for it. And, I think I don't know if we did talk about this, but I was looking at maybe I talked about it last week. I was looking at a rental chart that in 1988, the average rent in Minnesota was $350 a month, and now it's $1,450, I think. So gone up by $1,100. Now, 88 was a while ago. Let's face it.
Yeah.
Make more money, all of that. But the bottom line is that rent initially was an option for people who couldn't afford to own, right? It's like, okay, if you can't afford to own a home, you can always just rent one from somebody else. But rent has gotten so high that it's not that much more affordable, sometimes not more affordable at all, than owning a home. So it's kind of become an epidemic. We have to have places for people to live where they can afford to be there. I mean, we have to have shelter. Let's face it. It's pretty important.
Especially when it's 10 below zero. The renting homes, I've seen some of the rental prices for homes that the monthly charge is higher than what you would have paid for a mortgage payment.
Right. And
for that same home.
Right. But we just talked about like the price of heating and stuff. A lot of times renters do qualify for things like heat assistance. True. And, things like that. So sometimes maybe they do catch a break on some of that. But honestly, renting is not that affordable now either. So it has become a big problem. I mean, huge problem. And here we are, the second best state to raise a family. Well, doggone it, we got to be able to comfortably afford a home then, right?
And I think part of the issue too, Robin, is what is affordable.
Yes, right.
How do you define affordable?
Well, there is a formula, and it's a certain percentage of the regional income, or
sure.
They have a formula to figure it out. I should know that, but I don't, not off the top of my head. But I will say that NAR, the National Association of Realtors, really does get involved in this because, of course, we sell houses. I mean, this is a top priority, and so they work closely with the White House. They work closely with Congress. They work closely with the different states' government to try to really educate people about what is available, because there are a lot of programs out there like down payment assistance and things that are, backed by the government, where you can literally get a loan for a house and get your down payment assistance granted to you, okay? As long as you live in that house for so many years, you never have to pay it back. So those are the kind of things that right now the National Association is saying, realtors, we have got to educate these people. We have to help people understand that there are some avenues to affordable housing that do exist already. Of course, in the meantime, we have to increase more. This is a huge problem, and we have to have more ways to obtain affordable housing. But there are some options out there, and we need to educate consumers so that they're aware of them. But
isn't it true that the real crux of the problem is supply and demand? There's just not enough supply.
Absolutely. That's the problem. And that's why when people say, oh my gosh, is it a bubble? Is the housing, what am I trying to say? Is the housing market going to crash? Is the bottom going to fall out? And no, we have a very low supply of inventory. Even though houses are sitting on the market now 2 months, maybe 3 months, it doesn't mean that we have an abundance of homes, because we clearly do not. We are less than 25% of what we had back in 2008 when the market did crash.
Yeah.
So no, there's definitely still a supply problem when it comes to housing.
And that's a multifaceted issue. when Steve Borkart was running the Rochester Area Foundation, I had quite a few chats with him because he was really focused on this issue particularly. And
yes, he was.
And he said so much of it is, and you've used the term before, the churn in the marketplace, that because there aren't a lot of affordable options for people who are aging to get out of their homes, they're staying in those homes a lot longer. And it used to be those homes would open up and be the next home for the young family, which would free up that beginner home. But now everything's kind of just stuck in place, and people, it's not the same type of activity it was 20 years ago as far as people moving from one residence to another depending on the phase of life that they're in. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense, because that's what happens is then people sit there, and we're going to see that problem with this whole interest rate thing too, because what has happened is most homeowners refinanced over the last 4 years. Okay. First when it came down to 5, and then, oh my gosh, now it's 4, and now it's 3, and now it's in the 2s. So now those people are all locked in for the next 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 years, right? And so it's, even though they're bursting at the seams in their houses, it's going to be tough to say, well, it is time to get that bigger house. I'm just going to have to swallow it and give up my rate that I'm locked in at less than 3% and locked now at 5.8 or whatever. But in the whole scheme of things, it will work itself out.
Yeah. And to be honest, I don't know if when you have, as you said, bursting at the seams, if they actually did the math and worked it out, and actually sat down and talked to somebody like you, Rob, and went through the process, they might realize that interest rate increase is not as big of an obstacle as they thought it was.
Exactly. And there's options out there. I literally just had a closing yesterday, and the people moved, they sold their $300,000 home, and they moved into a $650,000 home. And it was a tough decision for them because they had refinanced and they were at 3%. And the rates at the time they locked in 30 days ago were kind of at the highest, right? And so they were just like, oh my gosh. So instead of asking that seller to reduce their price by anything, we asked the seller to pay $15,000 toward a 2-1 buy down. And so at the closing table, I asked the lender, how much did this help my buyers? Well, it decreased their mortgage payment by $569 a month for the first 2 years of the loan. Okay?
Yeah, so that's a bit of change.
It's a really nice change, and they're hoping that by the end of those 2 years, the rate will have dropped, which it will because it already has since the time they locked in, and that they can just refinance, and then their payments won't be $569 less, but even if they go up by a couple $100, that's better than jumping up by the whole $569. So, they use their brains, but they have 4 children, and they were living in a 1-bath house, and they're like, okay, the payment's really nice and affordable, but life is kind of tough. So they moved into a 5-bed, 4-bath house, and they are just so excited. So it's fun. I love that part of my job.
The mornings are a lot less stressful for them.
Yes. Well, starting this morning, this was their very first morning.
Oh, really? Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, we have to take another break, Robin, so we're going to be right back in a moment with more of Robin Gwaltney, Gwaltney Group RE/MAX results on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
We'll be right back with Robin Gwaltney and Andy Brownell on Rochester Real Estate. This is News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Are you drowning in IRS tax debt?
I owe the IRS $37.
With Robin Gwaltney from Gwaltney Group RE/MAX Results and Andy Brownell on Rochester's News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
It's Saturday morning. We're chatting with Robin Gwaltney, Gwaltney Group RE/MAX Results. And we've been talking about affordable housing.
Yes, and so what I wanted to talk about was what a lot of people, so we're getting, I feel like we're really getting away from shoving our parents into nursing homes, and people are trying to bring their parents in. That doesn't always work because, there's that whole boundaries and privacy and getting in your space. So these accessory dwelling units are becoming a rage. Not so much here yet, but we are definitely going to see them start to come into our market, but other parts in the country. And they're putting these little, basically, I want to say playhouse for adults, for a lack of a better words, but they're little houses. They're small units, either attached to your home or freestanding unit on your property. And I mean, they are just a great option to put an elderly parent or maybe an adult child that hasn't quite left, but rather than in the basement, you rent them a little accessory dwelling unit in the backyard.
So everybody has their own space.
Yeah, and they're self-contained homes. They've got a kitchen and a bedroom and a bathroom and a living area, and a lot of people actually in other states will put these on, like say if they live near a medical school or a college, they'll put them in their backyard and then use them as a rental right on their own property to help pay for their payment on their property.
Well, sure, I can see that.
Yeah, so these, they can add value to your home. Sometimes they can add as much as 35% value, and they're really not that expensive to buy. So I think this is something, just watch, but I think this is something we're going to start to see. The biggest problem is always zoning, and what do the neighbors think about that? And that's just something new, and we haven't done that here yet. It's always hard when you start doing it for the first time, but I believe that we're going to start seeing more and more of that.
I do know that part of the new zoning code that we have for the city of Rochester, that changes were made to make it easier to put those on property.
Yes, yeah.
I don't know the details, but
if you go to Arizona, like a lot of people have what they call their guest house, right? And it's basically exactly that. It's just a small little house that sits on their property that when they have company, like, we like you, we'll invite you over, but not in our house. go out there.
We're going to do our thing for a little while.
That's funny. Oh, I wanted to bring something else up. It's a way off topic, but I like to look for fun articles that might be human interest stories that pertain to real estate. So we're not always just talking about the interest rate and the same things over and over each week. So just in case anybody's out there listening and you've thought about getting into the very seems like money-making venture of wedding venues. It's like a big deal, these wedding venues, destination wedding places. Well, in Mayer, Minnesota, there is a place called the Ashery Lane Farm, and it is 64 acres, and it's, I think, pretty cheap. It's $5,545,000, and looking at the pictures, it looks absolutely gorgeous. It has like two great big buildings, like barn type buildings, and I guess one is where you have the wedding reception. The other one's probably where you have, there's probably rooms for the bridesmaids and the groomsmen and all that kind of a thing. But this orchard has 12,000 apple trees, with several varieties of apples, plus it has a big vineyard. So, lots of ways to make money with this property between selling grapes, selling apples, and hosting weddings or parties or whatever you have. Seems to me like this could be a great business venture for someone. So again, it's called the Ashery Lane Farm, and it is just located outside of the Twin Cities metro area in Mayer, Minnesota. Well, but I'd share that.
Considering how much they charge to rent these venues, I think you'd make your money back pretty quickly.
I'm telling you. So, okay, so I don't have any orchards for sale, but I do have some land for sale that I would like to plug. We market that Sally Hill subdivision out on the northeast side of town, and there are still some very, very beautiful lots left out there. And actually, we have a couple that people purchased and then decided not to build. I think, they got a little scared off in the last couple of years when building prices went up, but things are settling down again. So there are some nice lots out there. We have one that just backs up right to the river, and that one is $360,000, but it is absolutely absolutely a gorgeous lot. So I feel like that one is a 2-acre lot, and or maybe a little 4-acre lot maybe. And we've got a price range there anywhere from $160 all the way up to almost $400. So there's a big variety of lots out there. So if you haven't driven through, it's just off of 75th Street would be the northern boundary, and then Highway 63 or Broadway would be the eastern boundary, right? And then my big sign is up there, and you can just drive in and drive around, and there's a location map, but we also have a website, and it's sallyhill.com, and it's SALLEY hill.com, and it'll show you the aerial views of all the lots that are available, and it'll go through the prices. It'll tell you which ones have been sold, because several of them have been, and which ones are still available. But it's kind of a little gem, because a lot of times people start focusing on where can we find lots, and they forget to come to that end of town. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place. Lots of very, very mature trees, and it's not all flat. It's hilly. It's really pretty, and the river runs through it. So do check out Sally Hill.
I like it because you have that really suburban living, and you're like right there. I mean, the city is, you take a right turn and you're in town.
Or if you want to head over to Lake City, it's like, boom, you're there in 30 minutes. Or if you want to jump on 75th and get on 52 to head up to the cities, it's actually a really conveniently located neighborhood. And the high school for that neighborhood is Century High School. And yeah, it's a nice family place. And I think, like I said, a lot of people aren't even aware of it. So definitely, if you have friends that are looking for lots to build, or if you're personally looking for a lot to build, check out Sally Hill.
All right. We're out of time already, Robin.
There you go. All right. Well, we'll talk next week. I'll have a lot of more fun stuff to talk about.
Okay. And if you want to talk to Robin about anything dealing with real estate, how do they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. Please call me on my cell phone at 507-259-4926. I would love to help.
All right. Until next week, Robin, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Robin Gwaltney with Gwaltney Group-RE results here on News Talk 1340 KR.
This is News